Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to you all. My name is Mei Wu, and I'm from International Institute for Learning here in New York. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's session on Enhance Your Career with PMP Certification. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you our trainer for today, Jacqueline Dennis. Jackie is a trainer and senior consultant with IIL. She holds a program management professional PMP and PGMP credentials, and she's been with us for over 30 years. Jackie, it's great to have you here today. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, May, and welcome everyone who is here. So we're going to begin right away with the webinar agenda. We will have 4 topics that we're going to cover today in the webinar, and each one of these topics is going to delve a little bit deeper into answering these questions. So why even pursue a PMP credential? What about the exam and exam content outline that we affectionately call an ECO? And what about next steps? I said 4 topics, but actually there's 3. 2 of them are included in that second bullet that's there. All right, so we're going to answer these questions, hopefully to pique your interest and to encourage you to pursue a PMP. But beforehand, I have a poll that I want to present to you. And what I'd like to know is, do you hold a PM or agile type of a credential or any other credential that is awarded by PMI? So it could be a scheduling professional, it could be a PMI ACP, which is Agile Certified Practitioner. It could be you hold a risk management credential. So what I'd like to know is, how many of you hold a credential? Okay, so it looks like 62, 38. It looks like we have majority who have responded here, who are in attendance. Well, over the majority, we have 74% of you. So we're looking for a larger number. And we'll only give you a few more seconds to respond, and then we'll close the poll. All right, it looks like we're pretty stable here. So let's go ahead and close the poll and show the results. All righty, so we have 57% that say yes. You do hold some sort of credential in the profession of project management, and 43% say no. Actually, the percentage is a higher percentage than I anticipated. Okay, we have one more poll for you, and then we will get into our topic. So this poll number 2 is, if you are not already PMP certified, are you considering it in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, in the next year, or are you just curious? You just want to learn more about the PMP, okay? So you should be seeing the poll now. And we'll leave it open again for about a minute for everyone to respond. We have 53% that have responded so far. Last time we had about 74%. So I'm going to look for that same percentage before we consider closing. All right, it looks like the majority, when we combine some of the last ones here as far as options, later on as opposed to sooner. Okay, we have 68%. We have a few more seconds, about 10 more seconds. For anyone else that would like to share their thoughts, might be a few holdouts. I understand. Okay, let's go ahead and close the poll and share the results. All righty, so it looks like nobody is looking at earning a credential within the next 3 months by the end of the year, 15% by spring perhaps of next year, 38% within the next year, and 46 largest block here. You're just curious for the time being, and I can't blame you for that. That's where I started when everyone started talking about the PMP in my workplace. I'm like, okay, what is this about? And it took me a while to actually get there. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward and look at our first topic. Why the PMP? Well, let me give you a few things to think about. Employers will need nearly 2.3 million people each year, this is worldwide, by the way, to fill project management oriented positions expected to be open from now through 2030, okay? Also, the PMP credential certification is designed by project professionals for project professionals. And we're going to talk about the examination content outline, and that's where it comes from, is from project management professionals. And so the credential will validate that you are among the best of the best, let's say, that are highly skilled in people. People is one of the test domains that is in examination content outline, and it's described here. It emphasizes the interpersonal skills that you need to effectively lead a project team in today's changing environment. And that test domain that we'll explore a little bit further will have enablers in it to test you on to see if you can demonstrate that you emphasize these interpersonal skills and know when to apply certain ones. Process is the second domain. And process is described as reinforcing the technical aspects of successfully managing projects. So if you think about the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, or if you're not familiar with that, maybe you're familiar with what superseded it, which is our Process Groups A Practice Guide. So this particular test domain is going to test you to see if you know when and how to apply those processes that are in the Process Group Practice Guide. And then lastly, as far as test domains, we have business environment. And so in this domain, described as highlighting the connection between projects and organization strategy, you will need to be able to demonstrate that you understand the connection here. We don't just move forward with any old project. Those that are professionals understand that there is alignment between the organization strategy and its objectives and the projects and programs that are selected or authorized to move forward. Now, when it comes to what we call our people skills, it includes project leadership, which is, we could say, a power skill. And PMP credential validates that you have the leadership skills that employers seek. There's a lot of different styles that we have for leadership skills. The new PMP includes 3 approaches also. And these approaches actually will emphasize certain leadership styles depending on the approach. So we have predictive, sometimes it's called waterfall, but predictive is actually the appropriate term to use for the development approach, which is very sequential in nature. And the leadership style for your predictive tends to be one that is, we could call it democratic, but it's not going to be as relaxed as you might have for agile. Agile is a subcategory of the adaptive approach. So the adaptive approach includes incremental, includes, I just had a brain freeze there, iterative, and also agile. But agile is emphasized in the exam. And then lastly, for an approach, we have hybrid. And with hybrid, if you think about a Venn diagram, and we've got these circles here, one of them is predictive, the other one is adaptive, and where they overlap is going to be hybrid. And that's where we take the characteristics of both predictive and adaptive and choose the best way to ensure that we deliver what it is that the customer is looking for, okay? And this particular skill actually has more to do with way of working than it does with people skills, okay? Even though we will leverage our people skills or leadership skills, it's the way of working that the professional understands that because of the characteristics of this project, there's a certain approach that it demands as opposed to what might be popular, okay? All right, so still in the keeping of why the PMP? Well, the PMP is the gold standard of project management credentials or certifications. It's recognized and demanded by organizations worldwide. And the PMP validates your competence to perform in the role of a project manager and leading and directing project teams. Let me talk to this for a little bit. As far as competence, we talked about those test domains, right? We have people, process, business, environment. Now, you will also learn, if you don't already know, that when you are credentialed, you will prove that you have a high level of competencies in what is called the PMI Talent Triangle. And the PMI Talent Triangle has in it business acumen, which aligns with the business environment test domain. It has ways of working, which aligns with the process test domain. And it also has a competency that has to do with the people side of things, our interpersonal skills. And to be honest, for the life of me, I can't think of that last domain. I want to say leadership, but I know that that's not right. But when you are credentialed, you will move forward and maintain your credential. We'll talk about that later. And it will be required of you to earn a certain number of professional development units in those competencies. Also, the PMP supercharges careers for project leaders across industries and helps organizations find, let's say, the right people that are going to work smarter, are going to employ those standards that govern the certified project manager in order to perform better. And when we employ those standards, what happens in practice is that we're all speaking the same language. It's easier to set expectations. And also, we find that the success rates of the professional are greater. So in 2020, there was the 11th edition of Earning Power Project Management Salary Survey that incorporates information from more than 32,000. I started to transpose those numbers dyslexic a little bit. 32,000 project management professionals in 42 countries across the globe. And what came out of this survey was 22% higher on average across 42 countries surveyed when it came to salary. Okay, but it's not just because of the credential that one holds, because they demand a higher salary. That might help to drive the salary, but is the demonstration of consistency, a standard, and a more professional way of working. So we have where USA actually reported 32% higher salary, in South America 43%, in particular Peru, in Poland 22%, India 18% plus on salary, and in South America 28%. So these are all of, let's say, the reasons why you might want to pursue a PMP. Okay. If there are no questions, we are going to go ahead and move to the next topic. And the next topic we have is about the PMP exam and the examination content outline. Okay. So some of this you might already know. Before you apply, you need to make certain that you meet the following sets of application requirements, let's say, okay? So there's two different tracks that you can take. One where you hold a university degree or more advanced, a master's or even a PhD. So this criteria applies to anyone that has a 4-year degree or more advanced degree, where you will document on the application or in the application what degree you hold when you graduated. You will document that you have 36 months of leading projects. Now let me pause on this bullet point for just a moment. 36 months of leading projects is within an 8-year period, okay? And so if you're going to apply next spring, let's say 2024, you will go 2024 back for 8 years in order to document your history. And the history or the experience need not be contiguous. Another thing is you don't need to necessarily have a project management title to include that experience in the application, okay? When I was applying for a PMP, part of that experience was as a technical lead. I didn't have the project management title, okay? So that is perfectly fine with PMI as long as by the description of your experience, you reflect the fact that you were the one that was leading. In addition to that, you need either 35 hours of project management specific education, like a prep course, or you need a CAPM credential, which is the credential that's lower than the PMP, from a PMI perspective. So it's CAPM, then PMP, then PGMP. So it's the first professional credential that's awarded for project management certification by PMI. Now, the other track that you might take is where you don't hold a 4-year degree. You might have associate degree or a high school degree or a global equivalent, okay? So for that, on the application, you would document again that you hold this degree, when you graduated, and what in, if it's an associate degree, for example. But you need 5 years of practice, again, within that 8-year period. Again, you need not have the title of a project manager. You can be a technical lead like I was, or I've also known of individuals that have been analysts and have led projects. They've been system analysts or business analysts and have led projects. You can still use that experience on the application. And again, you need to have that project specific experience. You need to have the project specific training or the CAPM credential, okay? And generally on that project specific training, it's PMP prep. All right, so for your eligibility for making application, first of all, you want to confirm that you meet one of those 2 tracks, and you'll focus on one or the other that we just looked at. You will gather information about the projects that you have led within the 8-year period and any training that you have completed, or if you have earned the CAPM, you want to include that as well. You'll apply for the PMP, and it's an online application. So what you will need to do is to create a PMI.org account. It is free of charge, so there's no cost to creating the account. And then you will select the appropriate menu item from PMI.org in order to make applications. So you'll see certifications, and then under certifications, you can choose PMP, and then it will take you to the right button to make your application. Now, I would not recommend trying to do it all in one setting. I would recommend that when you make application, that you will divide your time up. What I did for one of my credentials is I divided my time up into 4 weeks. And every Saturday for 4 weeks, I would sit down for an hour or 2, and I would document online. I would save it, and when my time was up, and wouldn't go back to it till the next Saturday. And to me, that was less daunting than trying to do it all in one sitting. So that's just a recommendation. Now, once you have finished the application, if you know someone that's PMP credentialed that you trust, you might want to engage them to review the application to see if the language that you use to describe what you did is the right language, the right wording, for example, so that it's easy to review by PMI. Now, 20 to 25% of the applications that are submitted are audited. Now, the audit is random. If you are randomly audited, what they will do is they will select either one or all of the criteria that you use to make application. They might say, I need you to send proof that you graduated. So you'll send them a proof that you earned your degree at whatever level it is. Or they may say, I need someone that you worked with to prove that you had experience on this particular project. So you will need to reach out to people you've worked with in the past. So make certain that when you make application on these projects, that you have someone that knows that you're doing this and will answer for you or support your effort, rather than to have information in the application that cannot be justified by anyone besides yourself. No second party, for example. Or they may ask you to prove that you had your education, project management specific education. So if you took PMP prep, you will be given a certificate of completion, and you would need to send that, okay? It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to complete an audit. I've been audited once out of the 2 credentials that I've earned, and so I'm just going by just that one experience that I had. And again, setting expectations for those that are going to support your effort really helped, because when I was audited for a particular experience, I reached out to those individuals that I had documented in my application and said, hey, I need you to complete some paperwork for me. And it needs to be done within, I gave them 4 weeks. To get it back to me, and they did. Your eligibility, once it's valid, is good for 1 year. Now, whether you get audited or not, once PMI approves your application, then they'll ask for payment. And once you pay, that's when that 1 year time frame or cycle will start for your eligibility to take the exam. So you don't need to take the exam right away. You can schedule it 3 months later, or a month later, or 11 months later, if it takes you that long. And there is more information in the PMP exam guidance and also handbook that are available for you online at pmi.org, and there is no cost to them. Okay, all righty. Lastly, you want to schedule your exam. It says 3 to 4 weeks after the last training session with the instructor. And it also has 20 to 30 hours of study. My recommendation has been a little longer. I usually recommend 2 months to 3 months after training. If you've not started studying, if you have not started taking practice exams, you'll want to, first of all, get your application out of the way so that you're not distracted by all that, especially if you get audited, and then start taking practice exams and see how well you do. And you'll want to, in your practice exam, target 80% or better consistently. Because your practice exams tend to be easier than the actual exam itself. So you want to give yourself a little bit of leeway to do well, so that you can ensure yourself that you will pass. It also says to download the ECO, Examination Content Outline, and the Code of Ethics. Typically, these 2 are going to be part of your course material, okay? So if you're going to begin to prepare for the PMP, if you're going to take a PMP prep class, you're going to need that ECO and Code of Ethics from day 1 for that class. So you're going to get familiar with it as you go through the class. So don't wait until after the class, but I would say as soon as you get to that place where you're ready to pursue the credential, that those are the first 2 things you do after starting your application. Don't necessarily need to finish it, but after starting it, that you have those 2 on hand. All right, so what about the exam? Well, the exam is 180 questions, and 5 are for statistical purposes, so they're not scored. What they do is they intersperse 5 questions that are new to the exam bank, or they might be enhancements or revisions to those that already existed. And by the way, that 180 questions is not the same for everyone. There is a huge question bank. And what will happen is when you sit down to take the exam, then 42% of what's in the question bank that are in the people domain will be randomly selected, 50% in process will be randomly selected, and 8% in business environment will be randomly selected. Okay, so if you're trying to compare your results with anyone else's, that's not a good idea. It's not apples to apples. And what ends up happening is that your results are actually determined based on the difficulty of the questions, as well as, of course, the number of the questions. Okay, so some people will have a more difficult exam than perhaps you. Others will have easier exam than you. So to say I passed and another person to say that I passed, I mean, it's totally different with respect to the questions they had and how PMI determined the score. You're given 230 minutes, and there are 2 sections where you'll be given a break, and this is relatively new. When I was taking the exam, no breaks. If you wanted to take a break, it was taken out of the minutes for the test. So you made certain that you were not going to take time out until you answered all of those questions. And the questions will be a combination. It used to be all multiple choice, but not anymore. If there's multiple choice, multiple responses, that you can give matching, hotspots, and also limited fill in the blank. So a lot of variations in the way that you answer questions, which I think is much better because people are different and they think about things in different ways, especially when it comes to being tested. About half of the examination will represent predictive project management approaches, those approaches that use a life cycle model that is serialized, like waterfall. That has pure waterfall, practical waterfall. Also, software development uses a V model a lot of times, that is also serialized. So that's predictive. And then the other half will represent agile or hybrid approaches. Okay, so it just depends on the mix of the questions as to how many might be adaptive, might be hybrid. So some report that they had a lot of hybrid, and others will report that they had some agile, even some incremental or iterative. So we saw the percentages before on the exam. So people, 42% again, and we have a breakdown here of 21% predictive, and these are approximations, okay? 10% agile, 11% hybrid. Process is 50%, and 25% predictive, 11% agile or adaptive, we might say, and 14% hybrid. And then for business environment, you've got 4% predictive and then 2% allocated each to your adaptive or agile and your hybrid. So in our first domain, people, 42%, there are what we call tasks. And tasks are things that we need to do, as all of you probably know. But in addition to that, each task has what we call enablers. And enablers help us to do the tasks, okay? And basically, our tasks are going to cover things like servant leadership, which is a leadership style, conflict management, emotional intelligence, and virtual teams. Now, before we go on to the next slides, where we will look at what's in the ECO, you might already have a copy of it. What I'd like you to start thinking about doing is how, let me rephrase this. What I want you to start thinking about is performing a mental gap analysis as we look at these ECO elements, the tasks, the enablers, okay, for each domain, starting with the people domain. And I'll show you how to do it. And I would strongly advise that once you get a copy of the ECO, that you make a table that includes the domain and its enablers and a checklist, and to go through each one of the enablers and each task and ask yourself, am I able to demonstrate this? Do I think I can demonstrate this on the exam? Okay, so let me give you an example here. So for domain 1, we have task 1, manage conflict, okay? And so these are enablers here to manage conflict. These 3, I'm not going to read them out because you could read them yourself. But the way that you would perform a gap analysis is you could ask yourself, in managing conflict, am I able to evaluate, recommend, reconcile the appropriate conflict resolution solution? So on the exam, they might have a scenario and they might give you some options for the appropriate conflict resolution. Would you be able to choose that with a high level of confidence? All right, let's look at lead team. Okay, same thing here. We have all of these enablers to help us to demonstrate that we can lead a team. So in performing your gap analysis, you would ask the question like, am I able to determine the appropriate leadership style? For example, directive, collaborative leadership style. Again, on the exam, you might have a scenario and they would ask you, based on this, what would be the appropriate leadership style? Do you think that you could differentiate them or make a distinction between the style based on the type of team or project environment that you're leading, which a lot of times is based on your approach. Okay, next we have task 3, support team performance. Again, see if you could identify a question or craft a question, better said, for how to assess your ability to demonstrate that you're able to verify performance improvements when supporting team performance, or appraise team member performance against key performance indicators. And for task 4, empower team members and stakeholders. Would you be able to demonstrate that you can evaluate task accountability, or you can determine and bestow levels of decision-making authority? How would you demonstrate that? Okay, next we have 2 more tasks, there are several more to go. For this domain, ensure team members and stakeholders are adequately trained. And again, as a reminder, remember that these domains, the tasks and enablers have come from project management professionals who have been randomly selected to provide their input for this examination content outline. So they have provided their feedback, and from the feedback, these tasks and enablers and the domains were created, and from these, the examination questions come. So sometimes individuals falsely think that all I have to do is study the PMBOK guide. Well, that used to be the case when the ECO and the PMBOK guide were pretty much the same, where your domains were the same as the knowledge areas, or the same as your process groups, and the enablers within them were the same as the processes. So yeah, just studying the PMBOK guide way back when was the typical way to go, but not anymore. There's much more, let's say, critical thinking that is needed for the exam today. Yes, you will need the PMBOK guide and the Agile Practice Guide and your process group practice guide, as well as others, the ECO and the Code of Ethics as well. But you've got to make certain that using primarily the ECO, that you think that you can demonstrate everything that's in the ECO. So we have ensured team members and stakeholders are adequately trained, and you could demonstrate measuring training outcomes. For example, for building a team, you would be able to appraise your team members' skills or stakeholder skills. We have tasks 7 and 8. And so for 7, you're going to address and remove impediments, obstacles, and blockers. This is very much agile language. And so would you be able to demonstrate on the exam that you can prioritize critical impediments, obstacles, and blockers for the team in some way on an exam question? Task 8, negotiate project agreements. Can you participate in agreement negotiations or demonstrate that you can do this? We have tasks 9 and 10, collaborate with stakeholders. Would you be able to optimize alignment between projects, stakeholder needs, expectations, and objectives? And if so, how? Okay, so that would mean you would select the right answer on the exam for task 10. Build shared understanding. How would you do that? Perhaps by breaking down the situation to identify the root cause of misunderstanding so that you can address it would be one way to ensure a shared understanding. Give me just a minute, I'm losing my cursor here. All right, I got it back. 11 and 12, we're almost finished with the people domain. So we have engage and support virtual teams. So are you able to implement or demonstrate that you can provide options for virtual team members' engagement, and for defining ground rules, which we generally document in a team charter? Are you able to establish an environment that fosters adherence to ground rules? If so, how would you do that? What type of way could you do it, and what type of question could you be posed with on the exam that would prove that you could do this? And then the last two, we have mentor relevant stakeholders, which means that you're able to allocate the time to mentoring, for example, and 14, promote team performance through application of emotional intelligence. Do you know what is emotional intelligence, first of all? And then secondly, you would need to leverage what you know about emotional intelligence that has 4 elements to it to analyze personality indicators and adjust the emotional needs of key project stakeholders in some scenario, let's say. All right. Oops. Let me go back. So now we have the process domain. And the process domain is going to have 17 tasks. So there's 50% of the tasks. And while I go through these tasks, what I'd like you to do is, if at all, you can use your chat to come up with a question, as I shared a few moments ago. On the exam, would I be able to demonstrate, and then choose an enabler? You'll have to do it pretty quickly because I'm going to go relatively fast through this one. But I just want to see if you would be able to do that. Okay, so 50% of the test is in process. And as I mentioned before, those 49 processes that are in the process group, a practice guide, that supersedes the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, you would need to show that you can appropriately apply them to various scenarios. So you will need to determine the appropriate approach, like predictive, adaptive, hybrid. You would need to demonstrate that you're able to conduct project work, also governance oversight to the project, and the fact that your project is going to deliver business value. We have a responsibility for that as project managers. We just shouldn't take on whatever we're assigned and say, okay, I'll go ahead and manage this even though it's no business value. No, we have to question that business value before we move forward. All right, so domain 2, again, I'm looking at chat here. So we have task 1 with its enablers, be able to execute project with the urgency required to deliver business value. Okay, so what kind of question could you have that you would need to demonstrate your ability for that one? Task 3, assess and manage risks. Where we have 2 enablers that are there. Task 2, I went 1 and then 3 and then 2, but that's okay. Manage communications. Which enabler here? Would you or would you not be able to demonstrate your ability in being able to perform this enabler to communicate project information and updates effectively? Task 4, engage stakeholders. How would you demonstrate that you can analyze stakeholders or categorize them or engage them? What about task 5, plan and manage budget and resources? How would you estimate budgetary needs using the processes? And if you're familiar with the PMBOK Guide, those process names should come to mind. If they don't, you've got some work to do. All right, 6 and 7. So 6 is plan and manage schedule. Are you able to estimate project tasks, prepare schedule based on methodology? For task 7, in plan and manage quality of projects. Let me pause for just a moment on task 7. When we're talking about quality management, be mindful of the fact that PMI uses ISO 9000 standard for quality management. So QA is not going to be the same as you might assume. It's not going to be a test function, okay? So are you able to have that ISO 9000 perspective in order to answer the questions appropriately? Task 8, plan and manage scope. Are you able to prioritize requirements? How would you do that? On task 9, integrate project planning activities. So this is where we're going to create a comprehensive project management plan. If so, how would you do that? What components would you need? And 10, manage project changes. How would that be done? What would a change control system look like? Task 11, plan and manage procurement. Now, not all projects have procurements where you're going to contract a supplier or a vendor, consultant, or contractor, but you're going to have to know how to do that for the exam. And task 12, manage project artifacts. Well, first of all, what is an artifact? To be able to manage them. Everything that you produce from a project is not an artifact. Many of them are, but not all. So you need to be able to distinguish on the exam what is or is not an artifact, let alone these enablers that are listed here where you're able to validate that the project information is kept up to date. And then we have for 13, determine appropriate project management methodology, methods, and practices. So here you get into your approach and the method or methodology that leverages that approach in your organization. Are you able to recognize if it's predictive, adaptive, or agile being a subcategory of adaptive or hybrid? Task 14, establish project governance structure. Are you able to do that at the project level or recognize what governance should look like for the project if you have someone giving you oversight? Task 15, manage project issues. What does that take? Are you able to distinguish the difference between a risk and an issue? Oftentimes I hear those two terms used interchangeably, and they should not be used that way. Task 16, ensure knowledge transfer for project continuity. Task 7, plan and manage project phase. Next, we have business environment domain. We have 4 tasks, and 8% are make up those 4 tasks on the test. And so they primarily cover compliance, benefit realization, internal business environment monitoring, as well as organizational change management. Now, organizational change management is not change control. So you need to know the difference for the exam. And so we only have a couple of, well, actually about 4 tasks, I believe, here. So we have plan and manage compliance to requirements, standards, regulations, laws. How would you be able to do that? Task 2, evaluate and deliver benefits. Do you know what is a benefit? And the fact that it is the way that we prove value. It's not the outcome, the product, service, or result that we're delivering. And then task 3, evaluate and address external business environment changes for impact on scope. And then lastly, support organizational change. So again, organizational change is not change control. So you should be able to distinguish the difference. So now we have next steps. So what do you need to do? You need to make application. We talked about that. You do it online. You want to make sure that you know which track you're following, and then move forward with making application. You want to ensure that everything's in place in order to schedule the exam, that you have passed an audit if you're audited, that you have paid for the application, and of course, it would have been approved. You schedule your exam, and then the last thing is to maintain your credential. And there is a supplement, or yeah, I'll just call it a supplement from PMI that's free, and maintaining your credential using what we call the CCRS system. And it is where you log your PDUs, your professional development units, in order to maintain your credential. So the next steps, you want to set a date and commit to study times, and set a date for class, set a date for starting to make application. Treat this like a project. You want to create flip charts, if that's flip cards rather, if that's something that is of value with the way that you study. I know that I did it. I memorized all of the process models that were available using flip cards. Gap analysis, as I just mentioned a few moments ago, using the ECO, and where you have gaps, study those particular enablers. Also use PMI's exam reference list. I believe that's free of charge, as well as a download, and other sources that are cited. And I cited a few sources for the exam, and then review, of course, the examination content outline. That's the main driver for the exam. All right, May, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for taking us through the ins and outs of the PMP exam. There's a lot in here that we've just covered today. We have a few minutes, so feel free to pop your questions for Jackie in the question box. In the meantime, I do want to share with you, as you can see, the PMP exam is a very high intensive exam. There's a lot to cover here, and IIL is here to help you. We are an authorized PMP exam prep partner, and we offer in-person classes. We have a few coming up in the fall and the winter season, as well as virtual classes, which you can sign up for. And we know that you have many options for learning about providers, but one of the things that make IIL really unique in this area is that we have a lot of supplementary material to get you prepared. We have the Agile and the Project Management prep courses before you take the exam, and we also have the PMIQ exam bank questions, which is really helpful to get you to see where you might be lacking in a particular knowledge area, and help you practice in the exam. All right, I think we do have a question. Jackie, if you want to come on to take this question for us. So the question, Jackie, is regarding the eligibility for 1 year. What if you test and you fail? How much time will you be given to retest?
You can actually, okay, I'm sorry. You can actually retest as soon as you can schedule a second test. Now, you will have to pay for that retest. You can test up to 3 times. So once for your initial test, and then 2 more times within that 1 year period for a retest. And both of the retest is going to be a lower cost, but there is going to be a cost to retest. But as soon as you can schedule that retest, you can take it again. I wouldn't recommend rushing into it, but that's just to answer your question.
Thank you so much, Jackie. All
You're
right. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at learning@iel.com. You can check out our course syllabus for the authorized exam prep course on our website. As I mentioned, we have a number of live virtual classes in the fall and in the coming months. They are all different times, so depending on what time suits you best, feel free to check it out. Okay, we're seeing some other questions. I don't know if Jackie, if you're able to come back on to help us. Where can I find the list of skills that Jackie shared? So I'm thinking that this refers to the presentation deck. You listed all of the skills, the domains. So the presentation deck is not available, but please feel free to view the webinar recording at any time. Jackie, is there anything you want to add to that?
Just that most likely you're talking about the ECO content, the examination content outline. And so you can go to pmi.org, go to certifications, PMP, and look for PMP examination content outline, and you can download that. It's the same thing that I shared with you, but it just looks a little different for those skills. Okay, so hopefully that answered your question.
Perfect. All righty. All right. So in closing, I do want to share that we have an upcoming International Project Management Day online conference coming up. It begins on November 2nd. You can learn all about the keynotes, the presentations, the self-paced courses. It's a fantastic learning event, and we hope to see you all there. And for our webinar attendees, we do offer special discounts for you because we want you to continue your learning. So please reach out to us if you're interested in any of our courses or the online conference that's coming up. And you'll find more information on this in the follow-up email that we will be sending to you tomorrow. So with that, we're about at the hour, and I want to thank you all for attending. Thank you for registering for our various courses. We appreciate your time today. Thank you, Jackie, for taking us through the PMP exam. And we hope to see you all again very soon. Take care, everyone.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Good luck to you. Bye now.